Hello, collectors, and welcome to any friends or family members who have also come here because you're just nosy or perhaps morbidly curious. You're all welcome to the first episode of People with Issues, which I'm delighted to present today. Recently, September 2025, I had an amazing trip to Western Massachusetts in the United States, and a mutual friend introduced me to Carl. We started talking comics. Within just a couple of minutes, it was easy to see. Really nice guy to talk to, plenty of great stories. And I found myself blurting out, listen, I've been working on this idea for a YouTube channel for a while. How would you like to go first? Be my first guest. Typically laid back, friendly Carl just shrugged and said, sure, why not? So he's been fantastic at helping me test things and get things set up. And I had such a good time talking to him. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy it. And I'll catch you at the end. Carl, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing great. Doing great,
Excellent.
Paul. Thank you for
Excellent. So,
having me.
absolute pleasure. So you're always going to be a legend because you're the very first person to come and do an episode of People with Issues with me, which I'm always going to be really grateful for. You have been bitten by a radioactive guinea pig. You are guinea pig man.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm a good guinea pig, I think.
Excellent, excellent. So, look, all about collecting. So, for you, how long have you been collecting comics, or when was your sort of first experience of comics?
Yeah, I would say my first experience of comics was in the mid to late 70s. Um, my parents would go over to a friend's house, and I would tag along. Maybe I was 7 or 8. I remember it was a very politically charged time. Um, I'm not sure who was president. I don't know if it was Nixon or Ford. But it was around that area at that time. And I used to go over there, and obviously a kid of 6 or 7 really didn't have, what was I to do, when I was there. So,
Yeah,
um, it was the time where they didn't care. So they just go down to the basement. They said, go down to the basement. And in the basement, there might be some comic books. So, 6 or 7 years old, I went down to the basement. And when I went out down to the basement, they had stacks and stacks of newspapers. And what happened was is that I would just go, they would say, look through the newspapers, and there's usually comics in there. She bought this woman would bought comics in the 60s for her daughter when her daughter was in like junior high or high school or something like that. The daughter had then moved on to college. So I had these stacks of papers, and I would open up these stacks of papers, and I would pull out comic books,
yeah,
and 12-cent Teen Titans, Batmans, things of that nature. And I was just blown away by, as a kid, the primary colors, the especially those Silver Age books of this, DC. They're primarily DC books, and they just had those deep reds and the blues, and those colors really took to me. And also, what took to me was, and I became a grading snob because they were in immaculate. I mean, they were almost pressed,
yeah,
in between these stacks of papers. So when I pulled them out, they were in very good condition, and I just, I couldn't really read at that time, or I was just an emerging reader. So, they were just, and so that was it. And once they gave me that comic book, they could talk politics all they wanted, and I was just immersed in, a couple of comic books,
sure.
and they let me keep them. I took them home. I don't think I have any now because I would just read them until the covers fell off. But and that's kind of how I got into collecting, and or how I got the bug, as you said. The bug was there because of these fascinating, you know you know art pieces
Uh-huh.
that I could, read and identify with the characters. I knew what, in Teen Titans, I knew Robin. I didn't know really any of the other
Yeah,
characters.
it's kind of funny the way you actually got into your first comics is probably the way as adults we dream of finding them now. Stuff
Yeah,
in the middle of a
yeah,
stack of stuff in a basement or an attic or something like that. It's the dream, right? So I'm
it
sure
is the dream.
I'm sure we'll get to hear people talking about, hand-me-downs from relatives or being bought something special, on a special occasion or what have you. But yeah, starting off with for an origin, that's pretty impressive, actually, finding stuff in a
Yeah,
basement.
to have that, everyone, you meet a lot of people nowadays and they're comic hunters,
Yeah,
and I was kind of, I fell upon it. I was a comic, uh, you know, uh, hunter at that time because it was, that similar, um, that moment of like, wow, when you find, now as an adult and you find a nice collection or something like that, it's that wow factor or that the anticipation. And so I did have that anticipation going over. I would ask, can I please, when you go over to, this your friend's house, can I come along with you? And then I would, if they didn't send me down cellar, I would just be like tugging on somebody's coat, can I go down cellar now? Can I go down? And so I go down there, and it was fun. It was fun. It was a good time. It was a
that,
good time. It was probably the mid 70s.
so do you have anything special from back then?
I actually I don't have anything special from that time of when any of those Silver Age comics, but I started collecting comics, and I started going to our nowadays to a comic dealer to buy, or a comic. But back when I was, you could go to a drugstore, you could
Yeah.
go to a convenience store, and they had the spinner racks,
Mhm.
and so I would always ask my parents for 25 cents or a quarter and a nickel. Um, and I remember one night, it was a rainy night. I think my dad had worked late and he was a little bit grouchy. And, I saw a book that I really wanted and I asked him for it and he said no. And it was one of those things. We got back into the car. It was a cold, rainy, it was like a November. Um, and, I gave him the puppy dog eyes and he, begrudging or gruffly flipped me a 25-cent piece and a 5-cent piece, and I went in and I bought this. I bought Godzilla #1.
Oh, wow.
So
Oh, that's sweet.
that is yeah, that was a so so I keep and I collect Godzillas now because of that, you know, that moment you thought it was just a one-off or you're trying to get something from your dad, but now it's an indelible experience that I always have, and it's that moment that you remember, and it was a really good moment for me. So when I see a Godzilla, you know my dad wasn't Godzilla, he was a good guy. But I think of that moment with my dad,
Yeah.
and spending that time, and that's another piece of why comics are important to me, and I think that's why comics are important to a lot of people, is because there was those moments in your childhood that you remember, and it's because of you bought that comic book then, or at that time, or somebody gave you the 25 cents to buy it. And
And is that the actual copy from then, or?
yeah, so this is so I kept the actual copy. It's a little bit beaten up, um, but then I've been able to collect a couple more copies. But yeah, I do have a lot still from my own collection. I was able, like I said, I was a little bit of a grading snob too. So when I started becoming a real collector, maybe when I was in my mid to late teens, um, I would start to go to the comic shops and look at really higher grade comics, and that was an experience in itself. But it was amazing time. It's interesting when I look at my books. And I know that, you can take like this Moon Knight, for instance. When you look at it, you could see it's like 1981, and you could see my comic book collection was around, or the time that I bought the most was probably about 77 to 83.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of my span of time. I was probably 10 to 15 years old, you know. So looking at that, it kind of takes me back to that time of buying those books off the spinner rack, or going to. I found a comic shop. I grew up in Connecticut, so I found a comic shop in Connecticut, and that was an excellent, amazing experience.
And that, just on that point about sort of, you'd said you were maybe round about your mid-teens when you,
Yeah.
I think the collecting probably kicked in. Do you know what it was specifically? Was it sort of you know, looking at what you had, or was it
Yeah.
looking at runs, or was it the opportunity to start looking at back issues, or what sort
Yeah.
of?
So like any dreamer my age, I wanted to collect every single Batman comic book from Batman 1. I don't even think I understood that he was in detectives. So I wanted to collect Batman 1 to Batman, 300 at that time. So
Yeah.
that was kind of my dream. Um, and I started doing odd jobs. I was doing, I had an allowance. I was babysitting for a neighbor across the street. I was doing some, other babysitting, and I would get like, $20 or $30, and I would go to a comic shop in East Hartford, Connecticut, called the Bookie. And that was my thing. I loved Batman.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that character. I was too young to see the show, and I was too young to understand the campiness, the innuendos. So when I saw that movie, in this 1966 movie, I just was a purist. I came at that with a sense of purity, um, and so that kind of hooked me. And so I wanted to collect every Batman. So I would go to this place called the Bookie, um, and I would walk in, and you had that automatic musty paper smell that every comic book collector, I think it's a prerequisite
Yeah.
for every comic book collector to have. And I still smell my books. I don't know, it's just a fascination. But so I would walk in and I would say, give me let me look at a bunch of Silver Age Batmans.
Mm-hmm.
And he would go back into his little space, and he would bring out, I know it's almost sacrilegious nowadays, but he would bring out unbagged, unboarded pile of Silver Age Batmans. And I would sit at the table, kind of like I'm sitting at my table right now, and I would just go through them. I
Yeah.
would go through them, and I was getting, anywhere from Batman like 155 to maybe Batman 210,
Uh-huh.
something like that,
Yeah.
right before the Neil Adams issues came in. And I love that. Like this Batman, I have this Batman to show, like a Batman 202. That
Oh,
was kind
yeah.
of my sweet spot, you know.
Uh-huh.
And unbagged, unboarded. They were, they were stacked up with the spine, so they're kind of like all rolled up, but they were in really good condition. And I would just sit there for hours, and I would spend $30-$40 and buy a stack of Silver Age Batmans. And then that kind of feeded that fed my you know interest in other books,
Yeah.
Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Moon Knight. I gravitated towards more solitary characters. I think we were talking about this before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Batman. Robin is a good sidekick for Batman, but Batman alone is the vigilante. Daredevil is another character that I really gravitated towards. Moon Knight, kind of solitary underdog, characters that really don't have a like major superpower,
Just
you
kind of
know.
the street
Um,
level.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Maybe, had that 40-ish, the shadow
Hmm.
um, kind of backstory or something like that. So so those are the kind of books that I gravitated towards. And then I started from Batman. I started collecting Daredevil, Fantastic Four. I liked the Thing. The Thing was kind of like the underdog of the bunch, the misunderstood character. Going back to the bookie,
Yeah.
like I said, I would, so I, at the end of, my looking through all his books, he would write in pencil the cost of each book, and he would under the front cover, and so that's how I'd pay. I'd find out how much it costs and pay.
Yeah.
So I mean, when I look at it, two books. So I bought this one. I know I wasn't into Neil Adams as much as I am now, but this one I bought at the bookie. I know that's a major key.
Fantastic. What number? What
And then
number
I
for it,
bought
Phil?
that's Batman 251.
251.
Yeah, Neil
Great.
Adams.
That's such
And I
a,
mean, maybe I've read this maybe a half a dozen times,
yeah.
and I had the wherewithal to bag and board these books as well. But I paid $2.75 for it. Back in '85 or $2.75.
Yeah, yeah.
And then going along the same line of Daredevil, um, this was the other book that I bought from the bookie at that time,
Mhm.
and I just love. This is Wally Wood, I believe, artwork,
Yeah.
uh, and this is the first red costume as
Yeah.
well. Just a amazing, um, you know, action in stasis. Kind of that action. That's you could see it, and that's I love that artwork too. That can show that type. Um,
That's so cool. So I want to sort of come on to what the overall collection's looking like. But just there was a bit more you were telling me earlier about the bookie, which I think could be quite cool to share.
Yeah, I'd love to share with you. I think there's a Facebook, there's a kind of a remembrance of the bookie that's put on by, I don't even know who does it, but I'll definitely share that link for anyone who wants to go in there. And there's some really interesting articles. There's kind of a backstory of this man's life who ran the bookie, and he started a lot of the kind of minor Comic Cons in the state of Connecticut back in the late '70s and through the '80s.
Yeah.
I don't keep a lot of comics on hand.
Hmm.
The comics, I'm a very I'm a little bit of a grade snob,
Hmm.
and I am so I will buy collections, and I will keep the ones that I think meet my grade, meet the characters that I like, and I'll keep those. And I bag them, board them. I like to use the top loaders too. I really like the top loaders to keep it so really hard plastic. Um, and then if I don't uh, if they're not a character that I collect, I will sell that part of the collection, and it kind of fuels my collection right
Yeah.
now. So when you think about a collection, I know a lot of collectors have 20,000 comics. I
Hmm.
think I'm in about maybe 1,500 comics, which is not a big collection, but it's a collection that has been shaped by my interests. I don't have a lot of random comics that are just lying around that I don't read or I don't look at. So like I like Werewolf by Night. So and for some reason I like issue number 3. So I have like 4 issue number 3s Werewolf by Night. Stuff like that. I wanted to recapture my childhood a little bit,
Mm.
at this age. So I wanted to get some of those Batman books that I had as a kid.
Yeah.
And so I think I shared like, I had Detective 377,
Uh-huh.
a classic Riddler cover. So this is, just kind of recapturing that childhood memory of owning that comic.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had sold it or traded it along the way. And so that's one piece. Two is, I said I really like the Frank Miller run of Daredevil, and Daredevil has been I've been a fan of Daredevil. So as in terms of a complete run, probably Daredevil is my most complete, the most complete run that I have. Think I have a 4 up here. You can't really see it, it's next to my Wolverine, but I have like 4, and then I have 7, and then I have like 9 to 190.
Mm-hmm.
I like 4. I like the 12-cent Jack Kirby Thors. So, that's another run. And I like the covers. I like the action in the covers. You know, I got into Swamp Thing for some reason, and I like the Bernie Wrightson. I only collect the Swamp Thing 1 through 10 because that was the Bernie Wrightson run.
Right.
I have some of the old other artists,
Mm-hmm.
but it's that 1 through 10 that I really like. I like a lot of people. I like the John Byrne X-Men run.
Right.
So I have that. I've had that several times. I recently have been getting more and more into Jack Kirby, and so I've been trying to collect a lot of the Fantastic Four. But once again, I like only the high grade Fantastic Fours, and that can get pricey. But I have been getting I'll share with you here. So, like 2001: A Space Odyssey. I have 1, 2. It's just the artwork to me is fascinating. So I like the 2000 and Strange Tales when he was doing some of the work there as well. So
So it kind of sounds like there's some, so in terms of um, the Daredevil stuff or the specific sort of run of Swamp Thing, there's things there that at any time when you're hunting you can be adding to runs that you've got, and if they're
right.
I tend to I tend to sort of for myself think of that as that's like the main course, the kind of the meat, the veg of my collection. But then there's these other things, and I call them candy because quite often I shouldn't eat them, but I'm kind of like, oh, and I'll look at something like the Witching Hour and think, right, I'm not going to get into attempting a big run of them because there's too many, it's too expensive, and I've got too many other things I want. But if I pick a cover or a couple of covers that I really like, or maybe there's something significant in the book, and then to appease my own quirky collector thing, last week I managed to pick up. I had one issue of Witching Hour, and I managed to pick up the next 2 issues. So it's a small run of 3. So I've got that numbers thing, that consecutive numbers thing. So it's kind of like they're pretty to look at. I love looking at them. I think the content's really good, and the numbers are complete. So I'm okay with that. So do you find that you kind of got that choice of, well, I can pick things up to add to the meat and the veg, or there's these other things like, oh, there's a Jack Kirby Fantastic Four that is in terrific grade. Is it quite a varied mix of things that you'll hunt for?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's a varied mix, and I think that's what keeps it fresh too,
Hmm.
is that I'm not hunting when I go out there for any necessarily particular. I mean, I do have like I said, I do like the Daredevil. I do collect Werewolf by Night. The Moon Knight, I really liked Moon Knight, and I do have a story about Moon Knight. But and also I collect the 1980s Moon Knight.
Hmm.
That run I have because, like I 79 to 83 was when I was collecting. So Moon Knight was that character that kind of I gravitated towards. He
Yeah.
was like Marvel's Batman, character, and with more layers to him, actually. I found him fascinating. And so I wanted to collect, his first appearance. I wanted to collect, um, his first solo appearance in a Marvel Spotlight. So I have a Marvel Spotlight graded copy, but I also have a reader copy as well, so I can pick that up. But I had Werewolf by Night 32, which is the first appearance, and I had it back in the 80s, and I gave it to a friend of mine at that time because he had helped me with something. He had helped me, so I gave it to him, and I was thinking about it because he brought it up to me. He said, "You remember you gave me that Werewolf by Night 32?" And I was like, "I have no recollection of that. Can I have that back?" um, and he's but the whole thing is, when we were kids, and that's another piece of comic book collecting is, and I maybe mention this, there's a purity to it. We were collecting, we were trading, we were giving comics back and forth, we were reading them, we were discovering artists. And I think that was really a piece of it. And so even though there was a moment of, I had a twinge of like, I want that book back. There was like, I gave that book to my friend for, he helped me out, did a favor or whatever. We were collecting, and that's a good thing,
Yeah.
and he's still a friend of mine today. We're in our 50s, and he's still one of my best friends. So that's, so I ultimately, it's not it, either there's a story tied to it, there's, a run that I collected as a child, there's an artist that I like, or a story arc that I like, or I just like the cover. So I have a table right here that I'm kind of on. I don't know if I can just turn it a little bit here, but I have, and I just have stacks of piles of books that I just like, rifle through,
Yes.
open them up, read them. So
I think
there's no
I think the
really
rifling
catalog.
I think the rifling's critical. I It used to really bother me about the stuff being in boxes, and we have to be careful to protect them and everything. But this
Right.
this was a big thing for me, being able to actually run through the issues and look at them at any time, access to them. I love that. I love that at the table.
Yeah, I mean, I can just go through it, and then I have I have like 4 or 5 short boxes of stuff, and I'll just pull stuff out and kind of rotate it.
Mhm.
Whether I'm into something, maybe it's around Halloween, so I like the Werewolf by Night, or
Mm,
the Tomb of Dracula, so I'll
yeah.
take that kind of stuff out. Or I know that, I don't want to name drop here, but I know that Jeff from the Comic Spa, he lives close to me. And when he was selling his collection, I was able to buy, he had a collection of Avengers, and I was able to buy one of the Avengers comics from him. So that's, I have that on my wall.
I remember.
Avengers number 16. And so you know, that's my time with hanging out with Jeff, and we had some good times, and
I I
so that's up there.
I remember seeing the video where Jeff and Mike were looking at Jeff's Avengers comics, and it was just jaw dropping, wasn't it? I
Yeah,
mean, they, they,
yeah,
they looked like they'd never been touched, and I thought,
yeah.
damn this distance, because I'd give anything to have one of those. I set you a challenge of
I don't.
just try and guess, choose a book from your collection you think I probably won't know about or won't have, and in 10 words, sell me on it.
Wow.
If you're just picking something expensive, that's going to be quite cruel.
No, actually, I'm going to pick. I mean, I have a lot of different. This could go on forever. I mean, because there's so many comics that I have. But I'm gonna try this one.
Let's see what
This
you
is the Crypt of Terror, #1. it's a 1971 EC reprint. And I was a huge Warren fan, Tales from the Crypt, all those EC Warren in the 50s
Yeah.
comics. And I actually had an acquaintance of mine at one of my previous jobs who had a bunch of those. And you can't, I mean, obviously you can't, you can't get those, for under, a couple of $100 at least in low condition. But, I'm a big, as you can see, another werewolf type character on the cover with, the crypt keeper, the old witch, the vault keeper, and obviously these were individual stories. And I bought this in a whole collection, you
Mhm.
know, and it just resonated with me. And I don't know who the Jack Davis is the artist. I'm not familiar with his artwork, but I'm a big werewolf fan.
Oh,
And do
okay.
you have this one?
Well, okay. So I'm going to tell you about how you've done points wise. Full point, full point, and you're not going to believe this. Again, it's really. We'll do the points first. So first of all, I don't have that. Secondly, in terms of selling it to me, absolutely, I would pick that up because I think it's awesome. So you've achieved full marks there. I don't have any originals or reprints. Carl, this is absolutely true. Apologies if I turn away for a second.
Yeah, sure.
So this archive, Tales from the Crypt archive.
Oh,
This week I bought a lot of 13 of these EC and Eerie archives. That's not volume one. Volume one is coming separately. So this literally arrived yesterday. So
wow.
I don't have. I'll
That's eerie.
I'll no, let's see. That's eerie. Can you pick a book out of your collection that, regardless of anything else to do with it, it just makes you happy when you look at it?
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Yep.
gonna get up. I'm gonna get up and
Get up.
roll, and there we go. But in my opinion, this is top 5 Bronze Age covers of all time. It's
Keep
just the way he's presented there, the kind of the blue in the background, and he's in the kind of the negative space of him fighting the trade dress up here.
and
To me, this is you know spot on. It reeks Bronze Age, and it's top 5 Bronze Age covers of all time.
I think a lot of those, apart from the beautiful illustration, I think a lot of those. I'm attracted by those Marvel titles. So Marvel Premiere, Marvel Spotlight, triple
Yeah.
action team up, two in one. Because they're so different from the sort of standard character runs. But in the time you've been collecting, have there been any sort of major or significant um, successes or regrets? I mean, you can see like a lot of the books you've picked up are successes, but anything particularly cool that stands out, or in terms of regrets, whether it might be, something you parted with and wished you hadn't, or an opportunity that you had but didn't take, or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that spring to mind.
Um, I did talk to you a little bit earlier about trying to complete the Batman run, and there was a time when I was just buying Golden Age Batmans,
Mhm.
um, and they were amazing books. They had 4 or 5 stories in them. They were thick. The thick. I'm talking maybe I had a Batman 29, I had a Batman 10, a Batman 14. I still remember the numbers,
Yeah.
and through whatever I sold those, and at this point I'm kind of good with it. I've made my peace with not trying to, get that collection back. But and also I did sell a bunch of, I was buying books from the bookie, and those books were very fine and higher. And I was going to college in the late '80s, and I got a table. Here's the cautionary tale. I got a table at a comic convention, and I sold a bunch of those Silver Age Batmans that were in beautiful condition.
Yeah.
The Carmine Infantino covers, and looking back on it now, I should just I just should have just put those aside and just left them. But I sold them, and I'm still trying to, very selectively trying to get some of those books back.
Mm.
So that would be a regret, is selling those like high grade Batmans back in the. It was around the time when the Tim Burton Batman movie came out.
Yeah.
So I thought that I would catch the buzz, and but I think in comic collecting, we talked about before, we don't have very large collections, but we have collections we want. And that we've developed over time, either through our interests or because we like the character, or their significance is the time when we were collecting as children.
I think the key things in there that what's important, as you said, yeah, it's kind of a regret you've got, but you're at peace with it, and you have to be, because if we kept everything on the basis that we didn't know what was going to happen value wise, or more importantly, know how we were going to feel about it somewhere down the line,
Right.
we'd all have 50,000 comics.
Right.
Sometimes you just can't operate like that.
Right. And then sometimes I think, I've enjoyed this comic. I've had it. I've read it. I might have a reprint of it.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. Nowadays you can get reprints, and you read them that way. I love this. Doctor Strange Ditko run of the Strange Tales, and I do have some Strange Tales. But I can always pick up a reprint and read those stories, and that's good. And I'm fine with that.
Like you say, sort of stopping to take some appreciation of it's not just what you paid for it and the price, but it's like I've had this for a while. I've enjoyed having it. I've been able to look at it. It's been part of this collection, and I think that's really important. And if you've got books you're kind of not appreciating in that respect, then why have them?
Yeah.
But
What are you doing with that?
I think it's worth taking stock of when it comes time to move them on or consider trading them.
I recently picked up some early Thors, and this Thor 168. I just love that Galactus cover. I hope I can show it to you without the glare. But that Galactus, and that's Kirby, is reaching, that, is just a phenomenal cover. And I had a chance to pick it up. It was higher grade. It's a PC book. It's not going anywhere, and another thing too is when I go and talk to people about selling their collections or selling like a little bit of their collections, I always come at it from the collector first, and I don't like the idea of like a flipper, the name, that connotation is not, doesn't just give me a good sense. So I always try to, I really want to know the story behind, how did you accumulate this?
Yeah.
And I met some really great people. And I know that, I think Mike from Lunch Money Comics does it. That's one of the key elements of his channel, is that the story upon story of these people, and the story behind how they got their comics or why they're giving them away or how they found them. And that story. And so when I look at a book like that, and I know I talked to the guy, and You know, he was just getting rid of these books, and he had them since he was a kid, and it was just, it's just that story, and I'm kind of a keeper of that story.
Yeah, yeah.
um, and I think that that's an important piece of it, because I hope that, like, my children are a keeper of the story of our family, and I'm kind of a keeper of the story of these books and where they came from. um,
Do
and
you
so
know
that's
that
Go ahead.
I think that's again, I think that's a really valuable thing, something I really appreciate. And again, I'm really into the sort of the journey of some of these books, and and maybe it's why I like sense copies. And it's like if I take a book from 1964, I like to think about this kid maybe mowing the lawn to earn money to go down to a newsstand to pick this thing up, and it's in his back pocket, and he's trading it with his friends, and one of the bad kids is trying to take it off him, and they're pulling it back and forth, and then he gets home and he reads it and reads it and reads it, and it goes under his bed and it gets put in a cupboard, and it ends up with, and they just this journey these books have been on, and
Right.
I love looking at them and the adverts for things that are on TV and the stuff you can buy from shop, and Hostess Twinkies and books that make you taller, and the letters people are writing in to these time capsules of history. So I think,
Yeah.
like you say, sort of being part of that book's history, and the stuff
Yeah.
that's being cared for here, and you know when
We are curators in a certain
I
respect. I think, I think
absolutely
that also, I mean, also, we see this a lot too. I'm sure you see this, is that, you know, somebody was writing a note on top of the comic, and you can see in the comic the indentation of
yeah,
that note.
yeah,
Or some kid was doing maybe their math homework, not thinking, but their indentation is on that comic. I love comics with date stamps. I know
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I think a lot of people do, because it somebody stamped that book. There was it wasn't just coming off a press. It was handled. Um, I know that when Jeff from the Comic Spa, he pressed and cleaned my Daredevil 7. He said that it had I guess like how they used to tie them and bundle them in, and then throw them onto the newsstand. It had that kind of, I almost didn't, I was always thinking, why don't we keep it? But, it was interesting, because that was the story. That's how they delivered those comics back then. And so I do have a lot of comics that do have that, like, writing in them. I'd like to collect old books too, that sometimes you open an old book and it has a letter from somebody,
yeah.
or somebody had pressed a four-leaf clover in it or something. It's that they were doing something, and unbeknownst to them, now you have it, and you're carrying it on for whatever value that is, but you're now the caretaker of that piece.
You're absolutely right, and I'll show you. Let me switch back for a second. Um, this
Ooh.
rather lovely,
Oh yeah.
amazing Spider-Man from 1965. Of course, like I say, it's kind of important for me. I like the sense issues. Makes it much harder to collect anything for me, but there is. But this very common here. The stamp, you'll quite often see a Thorpe and Porter, the company that imported the books for
Yeah. Yeah.
distribution stamp, and the pen stamp on it. And that just, to me, I mean, it says sense on it, so we know where it's come from, but
Right.
that's part of its journey, and for decades that's probably been sort of kicking around the United Kingdom until it's come to rest with me. But all these things are, part of the book's history. So, is there anything else you wanted to tell us in relation to comics and collecting? So, I know in particular you have a Whatnot channel.
I do have a Whatnot channel. Yeah, I've been on Whatnot for about 2 years, just having monthly, shows.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that. I'll go through. I like to go through the books. I'll show the books. I'll take them out of the bag and I'll comment about them. I love. We haven't even touched about the ads. I'm always commenting how jokingly how these are handled by kids, and sometimes like we were saying, if I sell a low grade Fantastic Four, I'll like, damn these kids, but jokingly, of course.
Yeah.
But then again, I really like, that's another, I'm there to sell books. I'm there to try to take that money and filter it back into my collection. But I'm also there because it's a good community. I've
Okay.
had a really good sense of that community there, and the people come on and they can comment in the chat, and you're talking, and it's a really good community. And I feel like I said, I do once a month I sell maybe 30 to 60 books. And I'm looking to see what's my next, because I am hungry for that next find too.
Yeah.
So but it's been a really good experience for me. I know that it's not for everyone and some people don't like it, but I've had a very good experience
Well,
on that.
I'll make sure we've got a link to
And I'm
that.
not being paid to say that. I'm just
I'll make sure I've got a link to that in the
yeah, I'll definitely
description.
send you a link.
And I personally don't have any experience of Whatnot yet, so I'll definitely be interested in taking a look at that. And who knows, maybe on the next episode of People with Issues, my wall will start to resemble more of your wall if I end up buying a lot of your books off Whatnot. I'll try not to do that, but listen, Carl, you definitely have issues, and I want to say huge thanks for taking the time to share them with us. Brilliant stuff. I mean, I couldn't have asked for. I think in doing this, I want to chat to people about comics and about collecting. But there's come out of this that I can take into conversations with other people. You've been an absolute star, so thank you for that, sir. We'll catch up after, and to anyone
Sure,
else
certainly.
who's watching this, please make sure you give the video a like and leave a comment. You want to say hi to Carl.
And there we go. Episode 1 is a wrap. I hope you enjoyed listening to Carl as much as I did talking to him. Some fantastic stories, some great books. There was quite a lot more that we talked about that we didn't keep in the recording, and that was just because of some sound issues on the recording. That, the savage editing, the basic production, I'll get better at those things as we go along. And hopefully at some point we can have Carl back on and we can rework some of the things that we talked about that we had to leave out of this because they were great fun. As promised, I did attend one of Carl's Whatnot sessions. I did buy some books. I think the main one to sort of show off with you today is this. Like, I had to get a copy of this, didn't I? A book that's so special to Carl and probably the perfect souvenir to remember this session by. A really nice copy as well. Fantastic service. Somehow, this and the other books just via USPS got from the States to Scotland in 4 days. I don't know how he managed that. Man's magic. Everything beautifully packaged and in great condition, so recommended. Now remember, if you'd like to record your own episode of People with Issues, all you have to do is subscribe to the channel, contact me. You could do that via one of the links in one of the videos or on Instagram at Mr. McGroovy. So don't be shy, get in touch, and until then, stay groovy.